Yeah, yeah. No, I'm in the dining room next to the kitchen. The kitchen's all red and white, remember?
Yeah.
Okay, it's preparing to go live. I hope it's gonna work. Yeah.
Are you in the same apartment?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Magda, you might want to change your name.
We are live. So now I'm doing a big introduction. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm very happy that we managed to join our forces tonight and in the morning. In case of Kit, I want to welcome you, everyone, to a panel that we entitled "Improvisation as an Alternative Academy." And we invited Andrea Parkins, we invited Simon Rose and Keith Hennessy. My name is Magdalena Hovanec, and we're going to have also a live video presentation by Doreen Moka, who is a Congolese dancer and performer, who pre-recorded because of the technological problems, but he might be joining us after the video is going to be played for questions, in case there are questions. In general, I think we're going to have a discussion. I'm gonna a bit moderate it, and then after some time we're gonna play the video of Doreen. We're gonna look at it, and in the meantime you are invited in live stream in YouTube to post your comments or questions, and then we're gonna have a bit of time to engage into the questions, if that's fine with everybody. Well, I would like to start by simply maybe asking you all to shortly and briefly introduce yourselves, where you come from and what's your practice, who you are, because I know who you are, but probably not everybody knows everyone. Maybe who wants to go first? Andrea, would you go first?
It seems that I've been asked, so of course. I'm Andrea Parkins. I am a sound artist and a composer, and actually visual artist, a practice that I had put aside and now is reconstituting itself. I'm an improvisational electroacoustic musician as well, and I'm from the US and now living in Berlin. My most recent interests, after performing for many years in different contexts as an improviser, with other musicians, with dancers, with interdisciplinary performers, is really taking a look at the gestural impetus of the sound that I make. And so what that's done recently is actually had me strip away the sound and just take a look at my body and my own embodiment to try to understand how that happens. So I've been involved with a practice of amplifying drawing and video recording it, and trying to understand what the tensions are between the gesture, the movement, and the visual trace. Mm-hmm. And that's what my research is at the moment. What I find is that I really love the place where things become almost too difficult for me, where things really start to fall apart. I feel that's a great place of content, and that there's something potent there creatively. This is, of course, a very internal process, a very subjective process at the moment, and I would like to understand how to expand that into a way that it's more dialogic and more inclusive of people that are in the space with me, either as performers or who are witnessing it, because I think that is an ethical component that I need to solve. So I'm of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, sure.
Simon? Right?
Yes, Simon Rose is my name. I'm living in Berlin. I'm from London, and I was born in London, and I've been here for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was in San Francisco for a while, and then Canada, and then here. And I'm a freelance musician and an independent researcher and author. book is called The Lived Experience of Improvisation in Music, Learning and Life. And as the title suggests, I've done a lot of work in education and with permanently excluded kids for 8 years, teenagers teaching music and drama, and prior to that, special needs. I trained in drama originally. I sort of had an early career in drama, worked in theatre and education, toured prisons and things like that. Was interested in the political side of drama. Never really wanted to be an actor, but wanted to get into that. So in order to do that, I trained as a teacher. So at the age of 21, I had a teaching qualification. But I'm a musician. I've always, from the age of 11, I played guitar. I used to play in rock bands, writing songs and singing. And it got to a certain point where about the age of 30, I thought I'm going to go one way or the other. And for me, it was the improvisation that I was interested in. And my friend, saxophone. And I thought I'd put it there today because it's sad in the case. He's lost his gigs. He's feeling sad. And he wanted to come and say hello, so he says hello. And
That's my.
I want to hug it. I mean,
I do that afterwards, you know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. Thank you. Keith, would you like to?
Sure. My name's Keith Hennessy, and I live in San Francisco. And I've been based here for a long time, although I was born and raised in Canada, in Northern Ontario. And I don't work all over the world, but I do. I'm often in Europe and Berlin every year, and these circuits that travel, I'm in Vienna every year. But I'm deeply in San Francisco. I'm rooted here, and that's not just about housing, although I'm very engaged in issues of housing and gentrification, and I live in an anti-capitalist housing project, and I work as an advocate and activist around housing in San Francisco. Artistically, I'm based in dance, but I've always worked on the margins of the dance field. I sort of half-ass trained in circus. My early work really locates within a genre that we could almost see nostalgically as queer performance, when that was an actual thing, as opposed to now it might just be one of many kinds of threads or influences. It used to actually be almost a genre or a context. So yeah, I look at experimental theater, at political theater, at circus, at experimental dance, contemporary dance as all kind of languages within which I'm talking to, and I would say contemporary art in general. And then of course, since I've primarily worked with live musicians in my work, I also have a really long-term relationship to a kind of boundaryless space between music and dance and music and live performance, or the bodies of the performers. Improv has been sort of a central theme of my work since I started doing contact improvisation when I was 19 years old. So that would have been 1979. And although I stand at a certain kind of awkward distance from contact improv, it remains a kind of influential, relative of mine in terms of informing how I approach things. And a lot of that is where you could see that in my work without seeing any kind of contact improvisation vocabulary, is you would see that I'm still really interested in the improvised relationship. So I do solo work and I'm very into it. And there's a kind of interior dialogue for me between the work that I do that's collaborative, that's collective, that's partner work, with the solo work. They're sort of feeding each other. But my primary focus in both performing and teaching is the improvised relationship. And that is something that I think was sparked very early with contact.
Thank you. going to say like 2 sentences about myself. My name is Magdalena Hovanec. I am actually a ballet trained dancer, but haven't been there for a long time. I just moved quite fast into a different contemporary expressions. I was studying in Austria. That was accidental. I come from Poland actually. And on the beginning, you know, I had this very big wish to become like a very well-trained dancer and make a career in big companies like Wim van de Kabels and things like that. But then I met people on my way that simply showed me a bit different, and I'm very grateful for that. I think I had a very big privilege to be able to work with so many different people and so many different languages that I feel like a plastiline, and I feel extremely good in that morphing body that I am. And I think that I love improvisation. I just discovered very coincidentally, because I understood that I hate repeating patterns. It was something that I really hated. Maybe it was because of my ballet training, maybe because of my mind that always wanted to. First of all, I had a very difficult time to remember things after some time, and I realized that that I'm not interested in going the same way all the time again. So I think I started to improvise very early, first with music, uh, but then I started to actually do a lot of somatic work and not so much contact improvisation, but really work with touch. And I decided to become a body which is shaped by touch or shaped by somatic contact. And this is how I defined my weight, my perception, how I perceive myself in space. And I've been also personally very interested always in stories of other people. And I was very aware. I had an activist spirit, very interested, very engaged in many different topics. And that's, I think, where I connected, where I understood, okay, this is something where I could share with everybody, actually, basically a touch. I wanted, always had this very big wish to make the practice shareable, because it was also shared with me. So I thought, well, if it was shared with me and it doesn't require specific mega skills, then maybe I can share it with the others. And that's how I started actually to engage. And I think this is what happened, is that improvisation helped me to get into relations. As Keith also says, it's for me a way of communication that lays beyond what we know here, right? Or where we come from. Of course, so many information is embedded in our bodies, in our skins, and how we are socialized. But still, I think through very simple ways, I managed to create certain dialogue or exchange that showed me we can meet somewhere else. And this was very, very beautiful for me. And recently, since like 2000, well, maybe 13, 14, I engaged again in practicing with musicians, but a bit different now. I work with musicians more, again, seeing music as a part, as a body that shapes me somatically, which is a different way that I used to work with music before. And I think this comes from my experience with somatics and touch. So it's a lot about listening, a lot about being shaped by music. Yeah, and that I found very interesting to have us meet together, because people coming from different disciplines, having still very, very points, I think, of crossing, of connection that we all have. And we talked last time when we met, not online, or not like officially online, but we spoke about this improvisation as a way of dealing with uncertainty, that I think that uncertainty is a part of our now. I mean, uncertainty, I guess, has been part of many lives for many years in many different contexts. And we are now experiencing our own uncertainty in our own context. So maybe I would like to start by that, to ask you guys, how do you think the relationality of your practice at the moment, what changed? What did happen to your perception of improvisation, and also to your improvising yourselves? How does it go through all this technological device? Is this possible? How are you keep on going? Are you keeping going? That's maybe my first question that we could engage with and have a bit of on look, like what's going on now to us. How do we perceive that situation? Somebody?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think that regardless of now, uncertainty is a feature of improvisation, and I think, you know, people who work in a practice of improvisation are versed in dealing with that, with responding. And last time when we had a brief chat, that I mentioned the idea that comes from Luhmann about schools being that in my idea they're overprotective places, overly structured, and that they don't do a good service to kids by not including uncertainty, which is the truer nature of being, which is the truer nature of being in the world, dealing with. So if we go back to prior to the virus, the daily conversation was about ice caps melting and environmental concerns. And so, you know, the uncertainty related to that. And at the moment, so, you know, my dormant saxophone sort of, you know, is something that the uncertainty of how I can become active in relation to return to, people are using this word normality, or is a strange word. But it's sort of dealing with that uncertainty, and also accepting it, I think is extreme. I think perhaps accepting the uncertainty of when this thing might be over. When, you know, I mean, I didn't mention when I was talking that my coming out of my theoretical research, when I did my PhD, was the idea that improvisation goes across boundaries, not just in the arts, but throughout life. And then I wanted to test that, and then just began working intensely with dance and other artistic practices. So, you know, particularly working with dance, when you mentioned touch and proximity, and I'm very fortunate and privileged. I feel that I can get this enormous room, which means that I can work with one other. And but it's at a social distance, and I'm so interested in the way in which it's not that it affects the way I'm working with dancers and the way I'm working with dance in a that distance things takes a whole kind of aspect. And, you know, I thought you were rather, the way you put it, Magdalene, was quite articulate. You know, the music shapes what you're doing, I think you said, or that you're touched by the music. And this, you know, the touch thing takes on a completely different character now. But there are possibilities outside, and you know, adapting to being outside. Yeah.
But Simon, are you keep on going with your meetings? Are you now physically meeting also other fellows improvisers? Or?
Well, as I say, one of my responses to this situation is that I have got access to this room, and I am considering my work to be meeting with one others, because I think one word, it's very obvious, but I think that we've talked about relationality and words like this that come up in artistic research, but and I have done a project actually funded by INM, which was to do where we took the idea of relational aesthetics and put a whole load of different disciplines together and performed it in the Exploratorium, using that as a kind of a mapping idea about how we can work together. But I do think it's very simplistic to say, but I do think that improvisation is a social activity. I think that this is, you know, whether we call it contact. So it's a socio-musical location, you know, improvisation, and that's what we're really dealing with. And that's the most difficult part at the moment, because I think that everything else for me, of course we can work with solo practice, and that's interesting in its own terms of reference, but for me, working with a dancer is because I'm going to get something very specific, and something very specific from that. Actually, it's not even about the discipline, it's about the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll stop now. I'll give someone else a chance.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah.
Right. Andrea, Keith, who wants to go? I mean, you're also not obliged, of course, if you feel like.
Well, I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah, please.
So I've been part of several local and even I could say global communities of improvisers. I lived in New York for almost 30 years and then I moved to Berlin. And, you know, as you can imagine, both places are quite lively, lively communities, and they're absolutely communities. And of course, many of these people meet in other places. We were touring, we were meeting. Sometimes you would play with people you'd never met before, or maybe you never heard their music before, or you never heard of them before. And that's such a amazing opportunity for listening and experiencing another. And then also the vulnerability, if there's an audience, of presenting that encounter is quite profound. And I'm missing that, I have to say. At the moment, I'm exploring Zoom as a space. It's really interesting. So the work that I've been doing recently, my research is really around embodiment, working with interactive electronics, and thinking about situations where I can do spatial audio with those elements. And so, but here we are on Zoom and YouTube, and it's a space, but it's not that kind of a space. Trying to figure out what kind of a space, if this is going to be the space, and I really hope it isn't the only space. I guess I could invite someone into my boomy room and, explore that, but I'm taking it slow with that stuff. What is the space that we're thrown into? One thing I could say that's been a little bit lucky for me is that I've been teaching for about 12 years in a program at a low residency college, which is a very marvelous place called Goddard College, which I think Keith knows something about. And a lot of my interaction with my advisees has been in this space. So it's not the first time I thought about it, but to have it be sort of contingent for an improvisational dialogue or exchange, and that's the place, is really new for me. Recently, I've been doing some concerts that are organized by musician friends of mine in New York City, where I'm performing with two other improvisers, one who lives 5 minutes away from me in Berlin and one who lives in Prague. And it's okay. It's just really different. We have to listen more, much more, and say much less, articulating much less, and really taking space to try to feel each other. Feel is not even the right word, but there's going to have to be some new language with this stuff, I think. But I also feel a sense of concern and frustration and worry that we're possibly being relegated. Who's we? Everybody, who has access to this technology, and then even worse for those who don't. That this is a place that's potentially, controllable by others beyond ourselves. Technology is a pretty slippery area of, potential censorship, potential monetization, all of those things. So I'm checking it out, but I'm really concerned.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I am with this.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah. Wow, Zoom, here we are, dancing. I mean, in some ways, I feel like everything is on hold and I'm not doing anything at all. It's not true, but that is one of the feelings that I have, like that nothing is happening, that what's happening on Zoom is not happening, or it's not real, or it's some kind of temporary thing that we will forget about. And of course, I know that's not true, that there's the speed with which performance and dance are adapting to Zoom, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Insta Live, Facebook Live, everything. I mean, you know, you look at it in the drag world and it's like, there are clubs happening that used to have 100 people come to them every week, 150, and they were these very vibrant drag scenes. And now they're being attended by 500 people, by 1,000 people. And people are tipping through Venmo, which I don't think you have in Europe, but it's a cash thing with your phone where you just use each other's phone numbers to send each other money. And people are tipping $1 and $2 to drag queens using Venmo 10 times while watching a show. So I know that there's a lot happening, but at the same time, for me, it's like, there's nothing happening. My biggest focus for the last couple of months has been on trying to maintain live relationships. So I'm doing a lot of walking. I'm spending 2 to 4 hours a day outside of my house. So just walking. I walk by myself. I call friends to walk with me. Sometimes we make plans, but a lot of these walks are, in a sense, derives, right? They're, we don't decide which corner we turn. It doesn't matter how long we walk. It doesn't matter where we go. And this is a very unique kind of way to see the city again. So that's happening. And another project is I spent 1 or 2 days each week for the last 2 months homeschooling a 9-year-old dancer who lives next door to me. And we meet in our shared backyard and we made a piece that we performed for about 10 people. And now we're going to turn that into a video project. And because most of her dancing practice is not improvised, the relationship that we negotiated was a mix of improvised and set choreographic material. I had to do a lot of learning of steps. But I also, a lot of the focus in my work politically over the last, especially the last 10 years, but for a long time, has been thinking about asymmetrical power in the negotiated relationship, right? So I run a small nonprofit. I don't have a lot of power, but it's still a white-led artist organization that gets funding. So, and in the US, at least half the artists that you're hanging out with or working with at any given time have zero access to funding. If they're not in somebody else's project, they are at work in a restaurant, doing massage, doing sex work, teaching children, you know, with their 2 or 3 other jobs. So there is some kind of power position to have a nonprofit and to have some funding. And also there's, you know, we're very focused a lot on what we might call the afterlives of slavery, the afterlife of immigration, and the afterlife of genocide, right? So how the US, not just as an economic being or as a government being, but as a cultural being, is continually marked by the original colonial project of stealing the land, and then the development of capital through not just the resource extraction of the land, but of the forced labor of Africans to generate that money. And that's the money that has, in a sense, created modernity in many ways. That's the kind of theoretical way that we're thinking through these things. So for me to be a politically engaged artist is to be engaging with this, like, with these afterlives, what we might call these afterlives, but also to be thinking through decolonial processes, like what does it mean to work in relation to privilege or power. So a lot of my improvising has to do with looking at the power dynamics, even if they're just representational. Like, we are kind of 2 peer artists, but if one person is white and one person is not white, that's a difference. Thinking through gender, men, women, and the queerly gendered, thinking through the power differentials of age, thinking through the power differentials of class, all of these kinds of things. And so for me, the idea of improvising across lines of asymmetrical power is a real point of focus. So here I was improvising with a 9-year-old girl in my backyard who's from a mixed race family. And so what does it mean for us to try to feel each other and respond to each other? And despite all the different versions of asymmetry, find some kind of horizontality within that. What is her agency? What is mine? How does power function, and what are the ways that she manipulates the situation to get what she wants, and how are the ways that I manipulate my status to get what I want? And so that was like a subtext that we never spoke about, but that I was living every day and being in my practice. And I would say the other big thing I'm doing with Zoom is I'm engaging with this exploding online sex world that's, and I might call it the new age sex world. So like tantra, sexual healing, conscious sex, terrible words, but, and in the gay world, it's literally gone from being extremely marginal to thousands of men all over the world, meaning predominantly white men, predominantly middle-class men around the world, meaning the European diaspora around the world. And then some of the engagements that are going on are people trying to figure out how to relate through this technology. And one of the things we see is that if we go into any of the, because there's also every single day in the world, there's, like somewhere between 1 and 10,000 dance classes and yoga classes happening online. But what is lost there is that if you move into a contemporary dance, experimental dance class, we're all in the room together. We meet sitting in a circle, we do all these kinds of things. But as soon as you do the Zoom class, you either have to put the teacher in the speaker view, or you're watching a grid of micro bodies that you cannot relate to. So you then have to go into a solo practice, and you're withdrawing from the actual stimulation of the bodies in the room. So one of the ways to shift that, and it is a different practice, is to isolate body parts in the camera. So if this is all you can see, now we could be responding to each other differently.
Yeah.
And we could improvise just with hands in a way that we can't if I stand back here. And now imagine 20 of us, it's like there's nothing going on.
No.
So, and the last thing I'll say is that in the Tantra world, there's a bunch of people trying to figure it out. So it overlaps to porn very quickly, because very quickly I could just turn to here, I take my face out, and then I'm here, right? And that suddenly turns the encounter into a porn experience that we already know from a digital world. But there are a bunch of people working on these things with where you put only your face and hands in the picture, and then you start to improvise where you're watching the hands and imitating, and somehow you're almost replicating eye gazing. Kind of extraordinary. And I didn't believe it was possible. I was quite negative about the experience, but I've been really diving into it. I'm at least every couple of days checking into this online gay sex tantra world that's using Zoom to try to communicate. And I'll just say the last place that it seems that something's interesting is that I was never an app sex person. So I was not in an ongoing chat conversation around cruising or sexual interaction. But what's happening right now through these new agey sex networks is that people are describing what they would do to each other. So they're trying to actually touch each other in the fantasy realm with language. And I think that in certain chat-based worlds and phone apps, people have always done that, but this is seeming like a more intentional thing. It's like, because I can't touch you,
yeah,
I would do this to you. And so then through these apps, these Tantra apps and these Zoom things, we're sending each other photos, and then people describe what they would do to the body parts or to the photo that you send. So I'm watching a kind of improvised relationality of touch through language.
Crazy.
And that's also seeming interesting. So those are a bunch of the things I'm doing.
Wow, that's impressive. I can see that you digged into it like really well. About that touch things and tantra things, I didn't know, but basically, of course, all this. I mean, of course, that all this. I mean, we've been probably at every talk that we are engaging ourselves in that Zoom meetings. We always, especially as performers or movers or musicians, of course, it is this impossibility of shared voluminous energies that are there, that now they it's obvious how much they carry. I mean, how much knowledge or how much potentialities is there that is not being able to be shared at the moment. I mean, I have to say that what I do, the only thing I do, except that I was sitting extremely much on computer, which makes me crazy because I feel like all my being like shifts up here and really all the down is forgotten. I started to think a lot, like over the last 2 years, me and my friend Valerie Oberleitner, we worked on a project that's called iChoreography, that is really dealing with choreography as a tool of reorganization. And it was work about being addicted to internet. Basically, we started this work already a long time ago, and we started to work with teenagers because we thought, who, if not teenagers, are so addicted to internet like us, artists? I mean, we're sitting and spending hours on writing applications and on like, I'm sometimes thinking like what Veza also said, like, where is art? Where is art in my art making? Basically, it's extremely much bureaucracy. It's extremely much sitting in a position that I'm not meant to be in, honestly speaking. I'd be rather somewhere else. And we got like, I felt so stuck. We felt so stuck. And we wrote this manifesto that was called In a Search for We. And with this manifesto, we understood that there are certain patterns and structures, like also us, we are, I mean, I say somehow as human beings, as rhythmical bodies. I mean, if I think we are made by music, hypothetically, which is not true, but if I see myself as a musical body, then I'm thinking I'm made of certain rhythms and patterns. And what I can do with my improvisation is to change the rhythms and patterns. So I started somehow realizing that the world that I see in terms of patterns and rhythms. And this, I think, brought me to my connection to dancing and choreography, because choreographing and dancing, it's all about patterns and rhythms. And I think that if I see that the whole world is made of that, I mean, it's not that even if I see it, I just realize that I see it that way, that I see everywhere. There are certain patterns and certain repetitions, certain habits that are having certain length, well, like waves, like phrases, like musical phrases, like it's a composition of society, of relations I am in, including family, but also then relation into my dance scene, and then relation to other people and how the institutions relate to each other. So somehow, last time I read this text about improvisation also as a way of composition, because somehow, of course, there's also, I don't know, in the music that seems to be a discourse about what is improvisation, what is composition, is this something else, is this together, stuff. I always thought in dance, it was not even a question somehow. To me, very often improvisation was a way of instant composition or recomposition of elements. And I think if I can, with my improvisation tools, which I always see as a practice, it is a practice which belongs to nobody, but also belongs to everybody. It is in me and I can do it, I can activate it. Then I see myself in power of recomposing and reorganizing relations. So this work of iChoreography was about recomposing my relationship to internet. I'm really not successful at the moment, because these exercises that we've been doing and inventing with kids were so fantastic that, you know, it included like a person from the back pulling you away from internet, and like you had to do everything reverse, because internet is of course such a visual realm. I mean, we are so focused on eyes that like hearing gets a bit impaired and the body becomes really disembodied. And I feel that what happens to me when I'm alone on internet, I get extreme anxious. I get this very high anxiety level coming like up. I can feel it just in my body. I get like tension in my muscles here and a bit of headache, and I get very, very, very often stressed because of of course, now also the flow of information we are getting now. It's just so overwhelming that I feel I can't filter it. So everything gets stuck, and I just basically feel very stuck. And of course, then the only way is to sometimes have this sort of tics that we all have, that I have to do something like, like just put myself away, or like use some kind of practices. And what we tried in this project is like, we tried to implement these practices coming from choreography into our daily practice, in order that when you feel stuck, that you can help yourself. So it's a therapeutic practice. And I believe, because Keith was now speaking about all these hands and things, I think it's so fantastic. But on the other hand, I really feel like if I have to go there, I'd rather die. Because I feel so extremely two-dimensional as never before. And I feel I don't have even a wish to take a part in a class like that. I totally don't. But yes, I tried to improvise on Zoom with musicians. I told you that before. The only way it worked for me is I put myself next to a huge speaker, which was really loud. And by this, I had an impression of some sort of a Dolby surround, because the speaker was there, the Zoom was here. Because of course, if you don't have a good sound system, everything you project onto this thing. And then, I mean, it's like, what am I supposed to do with that? That's why I feel also it's really cool to talk to you, but I don't know if I was now willing to engage in some sort of a dance, because I feel this is not dance. I mean, it's not a dance with, yeah, I can dance, but it immediately becomes this performative realm, and it's being immediately somehow watched through this idea of media, of video media, which we talked last time also, how everything, the dramaturgy of video media and how timing of video media and spacing is being completely transposed onto that video, and suddenly all your perception is completely different than if you were there in the space with people. I mean, basically, I think it's very difficult to, yes, as Keith also said, I think this medium operates with such a different sense of time and space that we would have to invent a completely new methods, like this descriptive methods of imagining how it is if somebody touches me, right? Somewhere, wherever I want. But of course, it won't replace the touch. So I have a feeling we are even more in a process of translation than normally, because how do you translate the real sensation of touch and somatics? It's very painful, because I always thought already somatics in the world are not very somehow popular in some sort of way. Yes, for self-amplification and productivity, but as a realm of the world which would be valued, it was never there. And now I have a feeling it's even well, basically not really not really present.
Magda, jumping off of that, I've been thinking a lot about the sound of sound, the sense of sound, and the vibration of sound, and what it is to be in a space or a place where you're experiencing that, and what it is to be in a space and a place where you're experiencing it with other people.
Yeah.
Whether it's like a rave, or, a sound piece, or, you're walking in nature, so-called, and there's something, strange that's in the corner of your ear that, kind of draws you. And with this medium, I have such a huge frustration about how to be in that world with others. And, and what does it mean even, when you're with a bunch of people and you're all angry together, you're all experiencing something together. It's not about necessarily looking at it on a screen. It's also embodying in it in sound with others. And that's something I'm a bit worried about at the moment. Although I have a feeling, I don't think that the state that we're in is temporary, but I do think there's going to be some slippages in and out of it. just depending on the sort of confusion of what the message is about what we can and can't do, and also what people are going to do anyway. You know, because they're feeling impeded. They don't want to be indoors. They want to be outdoors and with each other. They want to meet. They want to touch. They want to do everything like we're talking about. So I think there's going to be a lot of going back and forth with that. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty about what's to come with that, and improvisation along with that, between live and this mode, and, you know, our maybe nervousness about whether it's okay to be out there with others, or whether we really have to retreat to these places, or is it a retreat? Could it be something else? So I think it's fluid right now.
Yeah. I think I see this also as both a temporary situation and a game changer, where there will be no return to the previous world that we knew. Like, and I think that's especially true for those of us who didn't live through SARS or Ebola or some of these other viruses that were more regional, right? Where the lives in the places that where those viruses were centered, they've had no return to a pre-SARS or pre-Ebola life. You see the use of the mask in these places, you see the different ways. So I think what we're in is both temporary and permanent. And I think that there are new things happening with the technology that are going to impact whatever we do in the future, including how we are live together in the future. I'm interested to hear from the musicians about what I see as one of the central problems of Zoom, which is that you cannot make sound together, right? So this is true whether it's, and again, I've been experiencing this in the online sex worlds and also online yoga classes, right? You cannot ohm together at the end of a class. You can't, whoever's the loudest is who Zoom chooses to feature. So you either have to mute and intentionally listen to one person, or some people are playing this game, which is everyone unmute and all ohm together and just watch it happen. Or if you're in a self-pleasuring, touching thing and people are starting to get into it, and then the facilitator might say, okay, everyone unmute and we'll just all make sounds. And you're just, it's like a popcorn of sounds. But there's no way to actually sing together without doing pre-recorded projects. So that just seems like just one of the many kinds of problems that we have. Like, I come from a big family. So the idea that the way you speak is by speaking at the same time as someone else or interrupting them, instead of that seeming like that's rude, that's seen as culture, right? And again, you can't really do it on Zoom. I tried to model it right now by coming in on Andrea, but one, it's like, we're polite, and if someone tries to speak, we often stop. But the other is, Zoom is already choosing for us who's gonna win. You can't have the two people go like this for a minute as the transition from one speaker to the next.
I have had the experience of performing on Zoom in trio. And, you know, if we were playing exact notation that needed to be rhythmically precise, it would be a disaster. But you get kind of this nice atmospheric mush that if you're into exploring atmospheric mush, it can work. But we've been working on it for a while. There's actually preferences in Zoom that can make it better or worse. You can even have stereo, but generally, you know, if there's 4 of you, forget it. So if you're coming from a family of 4 and your, you know, cultural expression is to all be in it at once, which is certainly the family I came from, not going to happen.
Yeah, and I have 5 siblings. So our family Zoom is my siblings plus their kids. So, you know, 9, 10 people in the family Zoom is a normal. I will say it's also very different because we normally never talk to each other. We call each other very infrequently. We send each other texts or emails. and we try to see each other once a year, but we don't have this ongoing thing. And right now we're Zooming every 2 weeks with the whole extended family. So that's another trippy thing about this moment, right? So the uncertainty is making it so that some people want to be more in contact than ever. And then the inability to touch is also driving a certain kind of contact. And even, like I say, in these tantra worlds, one of the things we're seeing is that many of us who would not normally be on Grindr or Scruff or these sex apps, because of our age, because of where we're at in our life, we wouldn't be on it. But somehow this telling me that I can't touch, or that I can't go get a massage, or I can't go to a dance studio and dance with other people, is driving all of these people towards a new kind of contact and outreach. So again, it's like, how will this longing to be together affect our lives when we can be?
Simon?
In February, I was reunited with Chris Chafe, who's the director of computer music research at Stanford. After 10 years, he's got the patent on the very high speed for telematic music making, sort of music making in different parts of the world simultaneously. And 10 years ago, when I was at Banff Center, when I first met Chris, we did telematic concerts with Chile, in New York, in Banff, in Bournemouth in England, and Northern Ireland, and San Diego simultaneously. So, and with Pauline Oliveros and Mark Dresser and others, and it was a wonderful experience, but a different experience from doing a live concert. So this kind of, I haven't yet got over going back to the social. I haven't sort of immediately gone to, because I'm not a tech person. I play an old 1932 saxophone. That's it, and so I haven't sort of sought some kind of solace by doing online concerts, because I found the telematic experience, while I valued it greatly, it's just another thing, and actually more akin to, because it took me ages to figure out, like, firstly, if you look at the screen, it's not going to help you because there's a lag. And secondly, just treat it like being in a studio in a booth with headphones, and you'll have a more kind of relaxed experience because you won't be fighting it. And so, in a sense, that's got its own social character, which is completely different, So in February, we were at the Technical University in Berlin, and we did a concert with some very formal musicians in South Korea. They were on a huge, we're in like a room or something. They're on this huge stage in evening gowns and whatnot, playing traditional instruments with a kind of a very operatic singer. So, and extraordinary in itself, but I just don't get that frisson. I mean, it's touch. Going back to Magdalena's thing about the music, and it's a bit of a preoccupation at the moment, this thing of, how music touches you, because it really does touch you. It does all sorts of things physically, and it's perhaps a paradox that I'm sort of mulling over that kind of thinking as my writing project at the moment is to write about performance or just thinking about improvisation in music as performance, because I think that's very under theorized. And so, and go to families. Yes, I also come from, on paper, there are 9 kids in my family. So, or I've got 8 siblings, and
Wow.
but not that we all speak to each other, even on Zoom. But what I've found out recently, I think I'm fortunate as well. I'm not alone here. I live with Julie, who's an artist, my wife, and my daughter I mentioned previously, Lydia, is here. So I'm privileged in that sense. maybe that's one of the reasons that I don't sort of feel a great need to get to go online. But nevertheless, we have a relative who's officially high risk because she recently finished chemotherapy, and so she's in a house on her own for 12 weeks, Karen, and we we have regular Skype with her, but what I found with that is, I said, listen, I find like clustered around the camera this end, I actually find it really frustrating. I just don't, I find it very unsatisfying. And we sort of just did a much more relaxed thing where we just did a relay and just, and come and go as you want, obviously, but just working with the limitations, maybe that's what I'm trying to say. Working, accepting what it is. And also I think that going back to the uncertainty, part of that is, we're seeking a kind of an ersatz with the technology, aren't we? We're seeking a replacement. We're finding another way automatically. But part of accepting its uncertainty is also, it's almost like coming to terms with what this is. And the frustrations that arise with the technology are really, I think, also partly to do with, so I noticed as soon as it happened, there's this plethora of online concerts. Well, they're not, you go on Facebook and there's a sort of a 1-inch screen and the sound's horrible, and it's, so it's like, well, I quite fancy doing. I would like to be invited to do that. It'd be a nice thing to do, because then I would, there's been a series in Berlin almost every night, and I actually saw one and enjoyed it a great deal. Michel Greiner and I can't remember, an electric bass player, and they sounded great, and that really worked. So I don't know, ambivalence over here.
I wanted to maybe now something came to my mind that that I have to mention is the word adaptability or adaptation, like adapting into circumstances. What I was just thinking, because it's such a big well, I think maybe this is what we can do very well as improvisers. We can adapt to a lot of circumstances, but I'm also starting to question, like, are we supposed to adapt to anything, or where's the alarm clock ringing? And then I feel like, where is this our responsibility to realize where the adapting is going in a way, like, yeah, sure, we're gonna find ways. It's gonna be like mega complex something that we're gonna maybe end up with internet surrounding us and everything is gonna be interactive and stuff. Still, I'm thinking, like, I don't know, but I have a feeling like we as human beings, we somehow do not go so fast as the interface goes, or as the technology goes, as this technology goes, because we are also technology. But I'm just thinking, somehow I realize that listening to myself and to also trusting in that moment, just that this is like, no, this doesn't go for me. Also, like, I can't pretend this makes me happy if it doesn't make me happy. For me at the moment is very important also to understand where my borders are, because the borders are completely crossed in this realm of trespassing. I mean, I feel almost like I'm trespassing, I'm falling into 20 windows at the moment, right? I'm falling there, but there is no reciproc, so there's nothing really coming to me live. I mean, it's like I'm falling and I'm falling into pieces. This is what I feel. And but what I gain out of this really is so little, because I know I'm living alone in Vienna, and then I was once just visiting a friend in the garden, and we didn't need to even talk. I felt so much better, even if we had to speak, stand 2 meters away from each other. It was so simple to just realize, my God, I was just 3 weeks alone, and now I just go, and I don't even need to talk. I don't need to look at you. Just the presence, even sitting backwards, I knew there is someone there, and I felt like a different thing. It was a different, totally different feeling, sensation about security, about safety, about certain validity of me existing, of also being, clear that I exist. I mean, by being all the time confronted just with technology and Zoom, you have we need always this validation that we exist. That's why I think there's so much online activity going, because we are extreme like exhibitionists as artists in general anyway, but everything turns into a certain product that screams for validation. And I have a feeling I wish to do it, and I also join a lot of activities, but on the other hand, I feel I need to so much take care of analog life that I'm leading at the moment. Yeah. And this is what Keith also spoke about, walking and taking walks and stuff. I feel also that something, you know, like care, very simple gesture suddenly became for me like, I don't know, this is what I always knew I have. It's really missing. And of course, in Austria, it was so terrible that people who lived alone were completely like excluded out of any press conference. There's been never even a word about, well, you of course can walk out with your family, you can visit your family, but friends was never being taken as expanded family, or as somebody that you actually live with, or somebody that's not your partner, you know, eingetragen, or like on the paper you don't have it. And suddenly we've been all confronted with paying penalties because you are on the street with someone that doesn't live with you and it's not your family, but actually it's everybody I have. So what am I supposed to do? So basically you can see then again how the structures of states or of politics, how it's again thinking in Austria, it's in extreme, this pandemic showed how who is visible, who is invisible basically in that whole time. And I think that for me, again, it's a question through improvisation, dismantling the structures that now seem to me even more, you know, visible and even more rigid than they used to. I have a feeling before the pandemics, we've been going fine. Suddenly the pandemics came and Austrian state to me became like something from the 19th century, like from times of monarchy. I was really shocked how fast it went back into very fixed, you know, very rigid, very old-fashioned politics, and seeing world through, you know, heterosexual, 1 + 1 + 1. There is no sick people. There is no people with mental health problems. There is no queer people. There is no people living different. All that, I feel, unfortunately, got really strong at the moment. I feel it scares me, actually. It scares me what happens, and it doesn't seem that it kind of goes away. It seems quite strong, and I feel in this pandemics, if it takes longer, these things again get solidified. These things that are not, to me, not good things. I mean, I feel some sort of regress, how much extremely progressive we can be here. There is some sort of a regressive dynamic going on almost everywhere.
I mean,
Well, I think,
go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's part of this sort of, you know, neo-fascist or proto-fascist sort of growth that's happening all over the world. And the thing is that fascism depends on fear, and the pandemic gives this perfect fear moment to sort of capitalize on or exploit in all these ways. And then what we reveal is all the structural injustice that's already happening, or that certain people are wanting to motivate towards. And then the pandemic brings it forward. There's a good piece in Art Forum by Paul Preciado where Paul asks, would Michel Foucault agree to these restrictions? And part of what I think Paul is opening there is, what does it mean to resist the state? And I think there's a lot of problematics. I mean, it wasn't intentional that my ACT UP sign is behind me for this conversation, but there are a lot of very positive and also problematic comparisons between the, you know, HIV or AIDS as a pandemic and COVID-19 as a pandemic. But one of the things that we learned really strongly is that even the fantasy that people are talking about of like, when this is over, when we go back to normal, what we know is that many of the things that we care about, right? You know, like I'm in a dance context that's very engaged with somatics and touch, with improvising, not just through the visual, but through our actual presence together, how we sense each other in a room, how we physically touch and feel each other. And then I'm also involved in both protest worlds. Like I've been to one protest where we got out of our cars here, and it was super vibratory in the street, like people trying to maintain 6 feet distance, but the police were not.
Yeah.
And then this whole thing of like people yelling at the cops of like, we have to keep 6 feet distance, but you don't. In San Francisco, we're not really seeing the kind of tension of France or Austria. People aren't being arrested, you know. And obviously we have a sort of history of queer visibility here that it would be very hard to get away with saying you can't have an extended family, like that wouldn't work here. But where I was really going is thinking about how people are assessing fear, and that the government / the state is not going to figure out when we can go to a dance class again. They're not going to figure out when we can fill a small performance space and be near each other. And they're really not going to figure out how any kind of group touch, erotic space, non-family, non-familial sex is going to happen. We're going to have to figure out those protocols. And it's one thing to resist protocols and to meet underground, whether that's like there are body workers who are working right now. Yeah. There are sex workers who are working, and most of them are having to keep it really secret. That's very different from when are we going to publicly say, we're doing it, we're developing our own protocols, we're figuring out harm reduction, we're figuring out risk assessment, you never fucking cared about us, and we're going to find our own way to do this. And I think we're at the very beginning of that, trying to understand, okay, could we use a theater space, but everyone has to be masked and stay distant from each other. You know, there are theaters that can seat 70 people that are part of a very vibrant independent dance world in San Francisco, who are thinking, well, we could maintain the 2-meter distance from everyone and we could have up to 19 people in the space. So there's never going to be a government proclamation that says, now open your small theater to experimental improvised art. That's never going to happen. We're going to have to figure that out. And in that, there's a lot of parallels with AIDS era protocols, right? The government did not develop safe sex. They did not figure out how to have a return to public sex. They did not. That had to come from the community. And it's in fact still coming from the communities. So there you go. And I think that we're going to be seeing some of that. Some of those parallels are interesting to me. And I feel a bit like a dissident, like I'm pushing my friends to expand their social contact. I'm pushing people to go, okay, we did a walk. Now let's meet 4 people. Now let's just do a yoga class in the park so that people see us, 4 people who didn't arrive together. And then we had an experience, we met some friends who have kids at a beach, and we one at a time hugged each other in public. And again, it's like, I had just tested negative for COVID. My neighborhood is part of a mass testing experiment. So I had just tested negative. Other people had been isolating, and they felt like the possibility that they would have it with the amount that it has not spread here was, our odds were super low, and we harm reduction, assessed our own risk, hugged each other in public. So I'm interested in where those boundaries are, but without being reckless or without being like, oh, I'm now this horrible person killing other people's grandmothers. Like, I'm really interested in the politics of precarity and uncertainty that are revealed by the pandemic, right? Like, what we're seeing is that people who were already not cared about, most of the seniors who are living in these, you know, quite shitty elder homes, they were already not cared about, but now we're supposed to say that we care about them because of COVID. And it's the same thing with our prisons in the US. We have the largest prison population in the entire world, and it's more racist than any prison system in world history. And yet suddenly, you know, we're trying to care about prisoners, but it's like, warehousing people is already a form of not caring. And it reveals all the class and race oppression that was already structured into our society, like the uncertainty, the precarities, and the pandemic emphasizes all of those things. So for any of those kind of changes to happen, like the shutting down of prisons is not going to come from the government. We have to do that. And there are opportunities, like there have been more people let out of jail in the last 2 months in the world than in the previous 5 years. So there are some opportunities that are happening, and we do need to jump on them and use them as pressure points. And I think that's true about the carceral state, like how we think about prison. I think it's true about how we think about old people, and it's true about how we think about sex, especially non-nuclear family sex. And it's also true about how we think about experimental art and the role of the independent space, or the places that are not built around profit and a market.
Andrea, you wanted to say something before?
Oh, I've moved on. It's fine.
Okay, I maybe wanted to have like a little question to you guys. How do you think that, I mean, I've like a huge list of very specific questions about composition and notation and many different topics, but I think that now I had a feeling like that I need to ask you guys, what do you think, how come that we moved into improvisation? I mean, if we think that improvisation is really like a way of insubordination, I mean, at least a bit how I see it, is this something that you think we need to learn, or is something that is in us and is being like killed? Like, could you just maybe a bit like speak about your own experience? Like, how did you find a way there? Why did you go there? Because it is very difficult, honestly speaking, in our very set, beautiful, conform world and comfortable world to actually improvise. It's putting yourself at risk. It's making yourself courageous. It's activating things where you think, actually, everything is fine. I could fit there perfectly, but I decide not to. Why? Why do I decide not to? What is the reason? And is this something that, yeah, why, well, how did it come your way? Maybe now Andrea can, because you're smiling so.
But I actually like to wait on answering that for a minute, because there's a lot of ways I could go with that.
Yeah, Simon, would you?
Okay. I thought there was sort of two parts to your questions. I'll respond how I respond, I think, because I'm an improviser, right? So I remember a moment when I was at a place called Dartington College of Arts in the 70s, when which was a great place, which is closed now. Sort of quality experimental practice it was known for in the south of England, in an incredible setting. It was an 11th century castle set in huge grounds, and
Legendary. We're all jealous that you were there.
yeah, okay, you've heard of it. So I went, okay, so Dartington College of Arts. And so I studied drama there. And for example, in the heady 70s, one of the things I had to do as an 18-year-old was they were very strong on dance. And somebody she was called Mary Fulkerson, taught dance there. In fact, now Mary's changed his last name. O'Neill, is it, or something? Anyway, Mary was there, and we drama students had to do dance first thing every morning, which I would have loved at my age now, but at 18, I was into playing electric guitar and riding a motorcycle with a sidecar, and it was a different. I was emotionally, and she'd say, find your center line, and then soften into the floor, and things like this. And then I'd found it quite challenging. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say this. When I was in a drama class with, it might have been a director called Feldman from the Living Theatre, or Peter Holton, I can't remember. But we were improvising, and it was the first time I think I'd been I'd improvised before, of course. I'd been on another drama course for 2 years before I went to Dartington. But I just remember a distinct moment when I was improvising with somebody and having a kind of very palpable sensation that I can do fucking anything here. And I hadn't had that before. Yeah, and it was and it was like, and I did. I mean, I didn't really do much, but I just felt like this is different. This is completely, Dartington was, in drama, was known for doing Brecht, Chekhov and Shakespeare, which is fine, which is good that they were. This was of a different register. This was something, I felt this is a different experience. And it was also very sort of potential, I could feel it's potentially dangerous and challenging. For example, how long am I going to do this for? And it was put me probably in touch with a lot of emotions that I had that I could actually use in quite a creative and constructive way. So there's a moment of improvisation there. And I suppose we can simply sum that up as voice, and that's the important thing. And you know, a lot of what Keith's just been talking about in particular, I sort of, you know, relate to that idea that's a kind of, it's like a channel, if you like. And certainly in music, you know, I was in bands in London and signed to labels and things, and got really sick of being that world and playing guitars and being in bands, sort of rehearsing sets to reproduce on stage. And I was in a band that started breaking that up a bit, and we would take tunes and not decide how we would play them before. So someone would start, we'd know it was that tune, but someone would start far away from the way we'd written the tune, and we'd sort of work our way somehow towards it and play with the elements rather than. So we were improvised. And I noticed the audiences would almost kind of step forward when we did that, or the brain would, something would be switched on. You'd see these people are, they don't know what they're doing, or, you know, these people are, it's the story is unfolding rather than being presented as a predetermined thing. So there was that moment. So that, and then I got increasingly less interested in that and more interested in people doing that in front of me, going to small clubs, discovering there's this amazing free improvisation scene in London. And, you know, going on a Saturday night and sitting, you know, 4 feet away from some amazing saxophonist and experiencing what they were doing. So finding a completely different kind of experience, shared experience, through music. So I you know, I related to that. And when I started, the first research I did was in the pupil referral unit, where I mentioned before I was working with permanently excluded kids. And I found that the way that I was thinking from my free improvisation practice was affecting the way I was thinking with these very, very difficult kids in the room. In other words, you know, so when you go into a free improvisation in music, obviously we are listening to each other. I'm not there to kind of dictate what happens with these other people. And I do well to acknowledge what they do. And I do very well to create by responding to what they come with. And that was after doing research in this pupil referral unit. And there was, you know, I sort of, it was, I think mainly through looking back on that experience, I realized that way of thinking was mappable. In fact, I was already doing it. So in other words, the pedagogical approach was to work, because it's no good standing in front of teenagers being thrown out of school and telling them what to do. Yeah. And I would encourage them, you know, whether it's drama or music, it's about coming in with what you've got and telling me what you've got, playing me what you've got, and the skill of the teacher there is to guide the process and facilitate and create a process in which people feel valued and acknowledge. I think acknowledgement of these people, of their stories. And so, for example, on a Monday morning with a drama lesson, people would come in after the weekend when who knows what had been going on, because these were very extreme kind of kids, young people. And we'd always sort of do the thing of going around a circle, say your name, and then say something, and then these stories would come out, which would sort of make your hair curl, and about what had been going on at the weekend. And then we'd kind of, that would become the material for the drama, sort of, and then possibly moving it forward and relating it to bigger themes that would relate to formal requirements of examinations and things like that. And always using video camera, and always looking back and talking about what was there. So I think, you know, I don't quite like it so much, but I think the term voice is the through line. It is social, and the improvisation is voice, but is about voice or self-determination and or assertion, but it's about the assertion of the self within the group context, and that's where the model of free improvisation is a valuable one to return to, because it's the eternal musical improvisation's quest, I think, to play in different contexts. And it's something I'm particularly interested in, is playing music, or playing this big saxophone with different contexts, whether it's been one other with a voice, or a dancer, or an artist using objects and animating those, or with double bass and drums, or solo. But usually, finding out how that works with other people, I think that's the job, actually. I think that's probably the job, yeah.
Mm.
But you had a second part to your question, which was, if you can remember that far back, it's a long time.
Well, I think that we can kind of, I think the second.
That's enough.
I think it's very clear. I mean, I just was wondering how did you guys find your way to actually step out of the system, or stepped out of the pattern, because that's actually somehow, it requires a courage, and it requires probably sometimes a reason, or maybe, yeah, as you seem to say, like, you've been also someone who told the kids that's okay to do, right? I mean, that's also a power that you can get from somebody. But yeah, I don't want to like now go forever here. Would somebody like to refer to that question? Because I just wanted to keep you aware that we've been talking already quite a long time, and I would like to afterwards wrap it up slowly, and we're gonna still see Doreen, which is a video that he sent us. That is really nice. I subtitled it in green. I couldn't find a better color that would pop up from the black and white thing. So I don't know, it's just, I don't know if we can see it very well, but it's a very nice in-look into his work as an improviser, choreographer in a totally different place that we are at, that I had a pleasure to visit last year, but and I'm very emotionally attached to the place, but I know also that in this place I would die after 1 week. Unfortunately, that's the truth. I know it. So I know that we are very privileged here to just be where we are. And so I would like to maybe say that this would be like our last moment here, and then we're gonna move on into the video, and then maybe we see if there are some questions we can then still refer to them.
Yeah, I would like to just sort of talk a little bit about how I came to improvisation. I came from a family of very serious classical musicians and very serious rock musicians. And I was a classical pianist who, maybe a bit like you, Magda, I would kind of feel a bit oppressed by the score, let's say, enjoying the beauty of the score, but also relieved at the points when I made mistakes and found another road. And, I would be practicing, Beethoven or Bach or Debussy or whatever it was, and suddenly something would, turn, and I'd go, wow, well, that's pretty nice. But of course, there was no validation for mistakes in that context. So that was just something I kind of stored away. It was a long, slow process. I think for me, improvisation had to do first with my experimentation with electronic music, which was very concrete, literally, because it was musique concrète in those days, and it was very plastic because it was at the time when you actually cut audio tape. So there is something about taking this piece of tape in your hand and that piece of tape in your hand and sticking it together, and what is the meaning that is made with that juxtaposition. So I was composing, and then I avoided the conservatory. Eventually in art school, where I made electronic music, but I also studied experimental film with some very incredible people, one of them being Phil Solomon, who has now passed away. But this was expanded cinema. This was, again, making meaning in a sort of structural way, but also dealing with poetics and sort of the layering of sound and image to make something else. I also studied documentary filmmaking. I'm sort of like the zealot of the avant-garde. You name it, I was there, and I was
I love that. That you've got to do a CD with that as the title.
the zealot of the avant-garde. Anyway,
Yeah.
I studied studied documentary film, Ricky Leacock, who was
I love it.
of the people in the US who really developed cinema verite in the US. And you know, so what is it going around in the camera and looking for with a camera and looking for something? So it was a little bit seeking, looking, listening, and the mistakes that I made. And quite honestly, it was a very long, slow process. I studied improvisation on the piano with a student of Lenny Tristano's, a man named Harvey Diamond in Boston, who really sort of took all the judgment out. It was really about play something, now play something else, and let's pay attention to the sound. So somehow the idea that you could make sense, you could order the world on one's, I could order the world on my own terms, allowed me to think, well, what about philosophically and politically? What are all these things I'm thinking and feeling? Can that be an impetus in a content? And, you know, it's arguable whether that's transparent. I am concerned that it may or may not be. I'm also concerned that maybe I don't need to worry about what's explicit. Maybe it's okay if it's implicit. But that compounded, you know, don't forget classical piano in the practice room by yourself, you know, or maybe chamber music. But then finding a community of people that want to listen to each other and make sound together and create something together that's bigger than us, you know, and that's about sound and about communication and listening. I mean, what a privilege. So that has been something, and you know, to be able to, as I said, to be with people I hadn't met before that I didn't know, another way of knowing people, another way of knowing.
Yeah.
So this was all very potent for me, you know, and also finding it a way to work visually in an improvisatory way about mark making. But then, you know, kind of coming out the other side and wondering, okay, well, what does this mean? What does this bring to the world? So I am always in doubt. And I am embracing my doubt, and I hope that's okay. You know, I wonder. You know, there's layers, but just to say, I'm very grateful to have had that experience. I remember the first solo concert I did as an improviser. I was quite shocked that people stayed. I was quite shocked that they seemed to have a good response. And then when someone gave me $10, I thought, what's that? You know, and I should have known that, you know, that was almost as good as it was going to get. But that wasn't the point. The point that I didn't really understand that there could be a place for this. So I was very grateful at the time. But now, you know, I never want to quit with that practice as a way of being with people or as a way to reflect on the world, because it's beyond sound and it's beyond communication. It's also some kind of philosophical apprehension.
Totally, yeah.
So I'm grateful to be able to do that. And I want to know what's next.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I want to know what's next.
I like the idea of accepting your doubt and then doubting whether accepting your doubt is a good.
Absolutely, worlds within worlds, you know?
Yeah.
Totally.
Just very briefly, it's I came into improvised dance by some kind of fluke. I saw a photograph. I thought that that photograph was cool. I asked what the photograph was. Someone said it was contact improv, when in fact it wasn't. It was, but it didn't matter because then it was too late. So then I sought out a contact improv class, and I was 19 and in my first year of university in Montreal, and Montreal had a very dynamic dance scene. And unlike some of the contact improv scenes today, there was a much stronger overlap between the contemporary dance, the postmodern dance world, and the contact people. And so it really was a space of research, experimentation, but it was also a freer space, right? Like, we met in shittier studios than the fancy studios. It wasn't the academy stuff. We changed our clothes in the studio. We walked in, we took our clothes off to underwear and then threw on our dance clothes, which you would just not do in a regular dance space. So there was something very early for me. I know I'm doing a sex theme through this, but there was something more sexually liberated about contact improv for me from the very beginning. And from there, I was then opened up to a whole world of improvised dance and music and art. And that was happening simultaneously to my emergence within anarchist scenes. So I really developed sort of my political consciousness at the same time as I was beginning to improvise. And there was something, I think, that Simon said of like that moment when you realized, wait, there's an art form where you get to do whatever you want. And then you start to figure out, and that's sort of like the kindergarten of anarchism also, right? Don't tell me what to do. Don't fucking tell me what to do. And then you realize that a more developed form of anarchism is similar to a more developed form of improvisation, which is, it's really about negotiated collaboration and learning to listen to each other and seeing how much can we collaborate without trying to coerce each other. And that is a simultaneous dialogue within contact improv, within the experimental contemporary improv scenes overlapping dance and music, and within an anarchist space of trying to understand what new forms of social relation might look like. And so that happened very early in my adult life, and I just haven't left it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. I wanted to quote Lisha Clark, which I really appreciate as an artist. She said something that I really love, is follow the question mark, always follow the question mark, even if you don't know where you're going. So I wish us all really much courage to just plunge into the deep water and just try to figure out what we can get out of there. I think that's very important, always, now even more than ever, I think. And we're gonna now go into Doreen Mocha video presentation. I wish that you stay there and watch it. I'm gonna mute you now, but then 15 minutes later, I'm gonna unmute you. We're gonna meet again. I think Doreen is gonna join us for a moment. And in case if there are questions, we're gonna talk and I will translate also, okay? Yes, I'm gonna now do this technological thing, muting, because otherwise we hear us all during the video. So I need to do like, so see you in 15 minutes when the video is over. Mute. And now, what am I gonna do now here? Like that. Yes. Then we're gonna go. Yes. No, I cannot mute myself.
Ah, that's true.
Right?
Perfect. Yeah, now.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Doreen Moka, je suis artiste, danseur, chorégraphe et auteur, mais j'ai aussi travaillé sur différents projets de théâtre, de musique et même de cinéma. Et je peux être aussi considérée comme un activiste pour les droits LGBT dans mon pays. Je vis à Lubumbashi, c'est la deuxième ville de la République démocratique du Congo. Et la ville elle est située au sud-est du pays et nous sommes en plein centre du continent africain. Et je suis trop content de pouvoir m'adresser à vous. Le pays a essayé dans différentes villes touchées par le coronavirus d'organiser des périodes de confinement total plus courtes et d'avoir des précautions d'hygiène pendant la période. Mais la plupart de temps, c'était plutôt un échec parce qu'il est vraiment difficile de forcer une population qui vit avec moins d'$1 le jour de pouvoir rester chez eux à la maison, alors qu'ils doivent être dehors pour trouver de quoi manger, de quoi vivre. Et donc, c'est un peu une période justement qui montre, en tout cas qui nous confronte à la réalité économique, mais aussi nous montre à quel point on peut être résistant et qu'on fait partie justement de cette population qui résiste, qui a dû apprendre par rapport à son histoire, à toutes les difficultés qu'elle a eues dans le passé, elle a dû apprendre à résister, apprendre à improviser tous les jours, à trouver des nouveaux moyens pour vivre, pour tenir une journée et refaire le même effort le jour suivant. Et c'est un peu ça que nous sommes en train de traverser maintenant et tous les jours, je pense. Et voilà, j'ai fait quelques vidéos pour vous montrer comment la rue est pleine de vie malgré le confinement qu'on traverse en ce moment, qui est une période difficile pour tout le monde. Mais voilà, les gens qui sont dans la rue sont obligés d'être dans la rue, c'est pas tellement un choix, c'est vraiment une obligation, c'est une responsabilité de survie pour eux-mêmes, mais aussi pour leur famille. Et donc, les gens doivent ouvrir leur commerce, les gens doivent être dans la rue pour vendre des choses, les gens doivent trouver des moyens de survie. C'est vraiment pas facile. Et personnellement, moi, j'ai passé beaucoup plus de temps dans mon studio et je sors de chez moi 3-4 fois par semaine pour aller faire mes courses. Et par exemple récemment pour aller voir mon médecin. Et donc voilà, j'essaie de passer plus de temps dans mon studio parce que c'est le lieu où moi aussi j'improvise et je trouve des moyens de résister. Voilà, c'est mon espace de recherche, de travail et de vie. Parlons de l'art en République démocratique du Congo. Pour beaucoup, l'art ou la profession d'artiste n'est pas une profession en soi ici. Pour les gens ont du mal à respecter les artistes, les gens ont du mal à accepter l'artiste comme un professionnel, parce que c'est déjà, les artistes ne sont pas reconnus, ils ne sont pas soutenus par le pays. On ne reçoit aucune subvention du pays, on ne reçoit rien du pays. Il n'existe pas une vraie politique culturelle en soi. Et donc, ce qui rend vraiment la profession d'artiste très difficile, même si je sais qu'elle est difficile partout dans le monde. Mais ici, le contexte, il est vraiment dur. Mais toutes ces difficultés peuvent vraiment devenir des atouts qui nous permettent d'explorer des nouveaux espaces, de trouver de nouvelles manières d'expression, bien que c'est bien dommage pour Lubumbashi. L'espace que vous voyez dans la vidéo, c'est le théâtre de la ville, mais depuis plusieurs décennies, c'est le Parlement provincial qui siège dedans. Et donc, voilà, on est obligé de trouver d'autres espaces alternatifs et voir comment on peut s'exprimer avec le peu de moyens techniques qu'on peut y trouver. Et le temps s'arrêta! Alors, l'improvisation, pour moi, en tant que danseur et chorégraphe, tout d'abord, en tant que danseur congolais, le défi est énorme parce que la plupart des Congolais sont connus internationalement pour être des bons danseurs. Et du coup, même la population ici se considère, prétend être des danseurs. Et lorsque tu es un danseur chorégraphe professionnel, c'est vraiment un défi de se faire accepter, respecter par le peuple qui se considère soi-même comme ayant des capacités de danseur. Et donc ça, c'est déjà un premier défi qui rend la danse comme une profession pas très sérieuse. Et donc les danseurs ont du mal à se faire respecter, en tout cas dans le pays, et l'expérience que j'ai vécue moi-même. Et donc, ils doivent vraiment trouver des moyens d'inventer quelque chose d'original, quelque chose de plutôt atypique. Et c'est comme ça que je me suis retrouvée à faire de la danse contemporaine. Dans cette recherche, je trouvais quelque chose de différent. Quelque chose qui peut me connecter à moi-même, mais aussi qui peut créer un espace de dialogue avec les autres qui ne sont pas prêts à me voir dans une forme de danse qui a l'air étrangère à eux. Et donc, dans mon travail, je construis beaucoup de choses sur base de l'improvisation, en utilisant plusieurs médiums. Je danse, je chante, j'écris, et donc j'essaie vraiment de ramener ces différents médiums dans un même espace et improviser de là. Et la plupart de mes pièces commencent par de l'improvisation, puis se construit sur base de ça. Et donc, c'est beaucoup de recherches que je fais avant d'entrer dans l'espace. Par exemple, récemment, j'ai travaillé sur un projet qui questionne les problèmes des mines, mining, dans la zone, ici, dans la région. Et Lubumbashi, c'est une ville minière. Et donc, j'ai dû faire plein de recherches avec des collègues. Puis, pour rentrer dans l'espace, c'était vraiment de l'improvisation sur base des éléments que j'avais recueillis. Et pour moi, les éléments, les facteurs clés sont le temps, l'espace et la mémoire. Et donc, lorsque j'improvise, je construis beaucoup en me connectant à ces trois facteurs, de me dire dans quel espace je suis, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé dans cet espace, que l'histoire de cet espace, c'est que me connecte à la mémoire, ma mémoire individuelle, personnelle, intime, mais aussi la mémoire collective. Comment je peux travailler avec ces deux mémoires. Et la question de temps, pour moi, c'est une question d'époque, une question de situation. Et par exemple, en ce moment, nous sommes dans un temps difficile, un temps de confinement, un temps qui nous confronte à la difficulté de se déplacer et d'agir comme on le ferait dans une autre circonstance. Et pour moi, voilà, l'improvisation en tant que chorégraphe se construit avec ces différents éléments. Pour moi, l'improvisation, c'est vraiment, c'est comme un mode de vie. C'est un mode de vie plus spontané, plus réactif. Et c'est comme ça que je me suis même retrouvée à être appelée activiste, même si j'ai toujours eu du mal à me présenter comme ça. Et que je me suis retrouvée à être activiste parce que ma vie était faite d'action et de réaction. Je me retrouvais face à des circonstances, à des abus, et j'avais envie de réagir. Réagir en faisant un post, réagir en acceptant une interview pour en parler publiquement, réagir en montant un spectacle qui aborde une question plutôt sensible et qui raconte des histoires qui sont presque interdites et tabous. Et pour moi, c'est comme ça que je me suis retrouvée activiste pour les droits LGBT. Je suis gay, je suis artiste, je suis congolais. Et pour beaucoup de gens, ces différents termes, artiste, congolais, activiste, gay, tout ça, ne pouvaient pas se retrouver dans une même phrase. Et donc, être soi-même, c'était une lutte constante qui a fait de moi un activiste, parce que tu dois vivre dans des espaces et on te dit, tu n'as pas droit à cet espace, tu n'as pas droit à cette place, et que pouvoir avoir accès à ces espaces, accès à avoir une voix, est devenu un activisme, et pour moi c'est une vie, c'est agir et réagir spontanément, comme justement l'improvisation. Il y a quelque chose de spontané, quelque chose de vivant, quelque chose qui a lien à un mouvement dans le corps, qui a un lien à de l'émotion dans un corps. Et c'est ça qui connecte la personne que je suis, l'artiste que je suis, le Congolais que je suis, l'être humain que je suis, l'artiste que je suis, l'activiste que je suis. C'est cette envie de vivre, cette envie de réagir, cette envie de pouvoir laisser des marques, faire quelque chose qui compte pour soi, mais qui compte aussi pour la société, et qui apporte une certaine différence, une certaine différence qui peut inviter le changement. J'aimerais dire en gros, l'improvisation est vraiment importante pour moi. En tant que Congolais, ça m'a appris à accepter les choses difficiles, mais comment aussi puiser de l'énergie et de la résistance dans ces difficultés de la vie et dormir sans savoir comment le lendemain va devenir, cette incertitude, comment cela peut devenir une force qui nous permet de trouver de l'espoir. Un mot avec lequel j'ai commencé vraiment à avoir beaucoup de problèmes, parce que veut dire espérer? Et pour moi, espérer, c'est vraiment agir et réagir aussi. Et il y a des gens qui crient dehors. Ok, j'ai envie de dire, dans la vie, il y a des choses qu'on ne choisit pas. Je n'ai pas choisi de naître au Congo et d'être congolais. Je n'ai pas choisi mon nom, par exemple. Et plein d'autres choses. Mais il y a des choses que je pouvais choisir, comme trouver la force d'avancer, m'accepter et me battre. Choisir ce métier avec toutes ces difficultés et tous les jours trouver des moyens d'avancer. Et dans ce processus, d'être en dialogue avec moi-même, l'improvisation a toujours joué un rôle très important dans comment on trouve de la résistance pour vivre, dormir et se réveiller sans savoir forcément comment demain va être. Trouver la force et l'énergie de se réinventer, de créer des espaces où on peut être soi-même, fier, libre, et où on peut raconter des histoires qui valent la peine d'être entendues. Réinventer des espaces où on peut se battre pour soi, mais aussi pour les autres, pour la société, pour la communauté. Et pour moi, comprendre à quoi peut servir l'improvisation comme technique, mais aussi comme manière de vie, peut vraiment aider à relativiser certaines choses de la vie et à voir dans les choses négatives, qu'est-ce qu'on peut tirer de ça pour trouver de la force d'avancer? Parce qu'il y a des choses qu'on ne peut pas changer. On n'a pas choisi le coronavirus, on n'a pas choisi le confinement. C'est quelque chose qui nous sont imposés. Mais il y a des choix qu'on peut faire. C'est trouver les moyens, les techniques, les manœuvres qui nous aident à avancer. Et quelque part là, il y a de l'improvisation, une improvisation de vie. Et c'est toute une résistance, c'est tout un mouvement. C'est un mouvement, c'est une résistance. Et voilà, je suis très contente de vous avoir parlé indirectement pour éviter des problèmes techniques. Et je serai vraiment heureux d'écouter vos questions, vos commentaires, et ça sera avec plaisir que je pourrai aussi réagir à cela.
Okay. We are back.
Yes. Where's
That
Simon?
was amazing. Thank you.
Simon, where is...
Is Simon still there?
Oh, Simon fell out, but now I'm admitting him again.
Okay. There. Oh, it's just the saxophone.
Simon left.
Saxophone remains.
Simon, where are you? Well, I need to see whether Doreen will find us. I mean, he got the link and I asked him to join after the movie is finished. But because the YouTube makes a little delay, it might be that he just... Oh no, but we are already actually online. So somehow he's not here. And Simon is talking to his family. Simon! Well, bye, Simon.
We're improvising.
Maybe somebody instead of Simon should just come up right now and pretend to be
Yeah,
here.
that would be great. No, but leave Simon's picture there and just mute him. And if he comes in, then he's there.
Here he comes. I hear his voice.
I know it was approaching, but I still unmuted him in order we listen to something really. Hello, Simon.
He's back.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Simon.
Hi.
Have you missed the movie or did you watch something? Oh,
I saw all the movie until we crashed. We crashed?
look, no, we didn't crash.
Oh, I crashed.
I think that you crashed. Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
Now I think Doreen is coming. Yes.
Oh, great.
Hi.
Bonjour Doreen. Tu peux nous entendre?
Oui, je t'entends.
Super. Merci.
Salut.
Salut.
Salut. La
Salut.
vidéo était super. Merci beaucoup.
Ah, Kit parle français
Merci
aussi.
beaucoup.
Moi, je suis canadien.
Très bien.
Ah, c'est chouette. Tu parles français, Kit, aussi?
Oui,
Vraiment?
je suis canadien, moi.
Yeah. Ah oui, bien sûr, parce que tu es canadien. Non?
Coucou.
Ah oui. Bonjour, Doreen.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Tu m'entends bien?
Oui, on t'entend bien. I will have to do a kind of a bit of a translation work here to just enhance this talk or like a little exchange. I have to see if, do we have some, what do you need?
Some paper?
No, do we have some questions there?
No questions.
Oh.
Only people extremely touched about the movie, and there was a person lively improvising with the piano.
Oh, where?
While this person wrote on the chat that while looking at the video of Doreen and listening at the voice, this person started playing on the piano.
Oh,
improvise.
C'est très beau. Alors, Doreen, c'est comme ça qu'il n'y a pas vraiment de questions, mais tout le monde était très touché par la vidéo. Et une personne a dit qu'elle a commencé à jouer piano.
À jouer du piano.
Pendant écouter la vidéo, tu sais. Mais les gens envoient le cœur et tout ça, alors comme ça, dans le YouTube truc. Mais on n'a pas de questions. There is no questions really, but we can have some questions if we feel like talking a bit and asking Doreen about things, or if Doreen wants to ask us something. Let's please feel free. Alors Doreen, il n'y a pas de questions sur YouTube, mais je dis juste que on pourrait...
Je suis content.
Tu m'écoutes. Mais non, mais je dis juste que peut-être nous, on veut te demander quelque chose. Et c'est pour ça que je dis aux gens, s'ils ont des questions pour toi. Guys, would you like to ask something, or would you like to say something? I mean, it's not like obligatory, but everybody's no.
You mentioned. By the way, my screen is frozen, but
Yeah,
I can hear you all.
It's funny, you're like frozen, but you're talking.
I'm talking, but I'm frozen. It's amazing. This is one of the things that I can do, and
it's a good thing.
Because Jewel, I was listening to Jewel on another thing talking about making the voice do things that the face doesn't do. So she would have liked this, but yeah, you talked about in Doreen, you talked about being marginalized, and do you, I mean, in with your practice in your country, and I wonder if you could talk more about that. I mean, it must be really, you know, when you go out and do certain improvised acts in you know, when I live in Berlin, and every night there's maybe 5 or 10 improvised music concerts, so I'm not receiving that. You know, you're out on the front line. I wonder if you could talk more about that.
Just that I am clear, so you are curious about how he deals with being marginalized in the context of improvisation performing?
It seems to me that the meaning of improvisation in the arts there is very, very different from, in that sense, that you're coming from a very marginalized position already. And how does that feel?
Mm-hmm. Doreen, tu es là? Doreen?
Oui.
Ah oui, tu es là. Ok, super.
Je suis là. Le son est un peu entrecoupé.
Je comprends. Mais c'est bon sans image, peut-être c'est un peu plus simple, mais je vais te donner une question de Simone qui t'a demandé quand tu es un peu aux margines de société par rapport à être déjà gay, activiste, pas très, tu sais, pas une personne très conformiste. Comment ça se passe avec l'improvisation au Congo? C'est comment pour toi? Comment ce sont les réactions sur ton projet, sur tes performances? Comment tu fais ça et comment ça se passe?
Tu pourrais répéter la dernière phrase, s'il te plaît?
Oui, c'est par rapport, comment sont les réactions du public et aussi des sociétés par rapport à tes projets, par rapport à ta présence sur la scène? Comment ça se passe?
Ah, ok. En général, il y a toujours... d'un côté, ça fait des années que je travaille dans le pays et qu'il y a plusieurs personnes qui suivent mon travail. Et donc, certaines personnes ne sont pas d'accord de certains propos que je porte sur scène, mais ils viennent toujours voir le spectacle. Ils ont toujours cette curiosité de venir me suivre. Et au fil des années, c'est devenu presque une protection, que des gens viennent me voir en spectacle et que même les personnes qui sont violentes ne peuvent pas agir parce que les gens veulent voir le spectacle, veulent écouter l'histoire ou ce qui se passe sur la scène, même s'ils ne sont pas d'accord avec ma position et mon choix.
Ah, c'est chouette. Ok, je vais traduire maintenant. Okay, Simon. So Doreen is saying that he's worked since some years, and over some years he really kind of got some followers, almost like a kind of a fan club.
Okay.
Fan club that really always follow his work since a long time. And at the moment, it's very often like this, that even if people do not agree with the propositions he's putting on stage, still they want to go to see a performance because they are curious about the story and about the setting, and they want to experience it. So it became almost like a protection for him somehow, that even if he's controversial in his narratives, people still cannot even like impose a violence on him because they appreciate more the artistic aspect of the proposition, which is very interesting. Yeah.
Really interesting, yeah.
Et c'est très intéressant, Doreen. On tout dit que c'est très intéressant comme l'art protège la position, ta position parfois.
Exactement.
Oui.
Et c'est ça le pouvoir de l'art. C'est pour ça que nous, artistes, nous nous avons du pouvoir, nous sommes puissants d'une certaine manière.
This is how he says that this is also the power of art, that he sees that we have this magic power somehow through that.
I'm wondering, can I ask another question?
Sure.
I'm wondering if Doreen knows about the huge improvisation research project in Canada. Does he know about this? Because I think they would adopt him instantly and pay for him to go over there. So I just want to know if he knows about that, because he could benefit from it.
In Canada, is there a big research on improvisation?
Absolutely. There's critical studies in improvisation.
This I heard about.
Yeah, I think it was called improvisation as community, and
it's also where Ellen Waterman is, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
and it's AJ Hebel is the
it's one of the most fantastic things I heard over
the chapter that you took is from a publication out of that.
Yes,
but it's now across 5 or 7 universities. Wow. And it has so anyway, I just think it's important that Doreen is, or they're aware.
Thank you for sharing that.
I think it's very important they're aware of your work.
I would try to know more about that.
I suggest you reach out to them this evening.
Yes, you have to reach out in order to get the Schengen visa, right?
And we have time now, right? We have a lot of time.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Guys, would you like to still ask something or share something with Doreen? Or maybe, peut-être Doreen, tu veux nous demander quelque chose, ou si tu veux parler de quelque chose, peut-être je peux te demander comment ça se passe par l'instant, maintenant, parce que la vidéo était prise déjà un peu 2-3 semaines, mais comment ça se passe maintenant à Lubumbashi? C'est devenu mieux ou pire? Comment la situation? I asked how the situation is at the moment in there, because the video has been made like around 1 month ago almost already, and I just asked if it's better or worse, or what's this condition.
Ouais. À présent, pour l'instant, on a eu juste une personne qui a été diagnostiquée positive au virus, ce qui est plutôt positif. Mais malheureusement, toute cette période, à cause de toute la tension qu'il y a autour, il y a eu beaucoup de problèmes d'insécurité, par exemple. Les prix de la nourriture a aussi augmenté partout dans la ville. Et ce qui me pousse presque à dire, le vrai virus qu'on a ici, ce n'est pas le coronavirus, c'est plutôt l'incertitude du lendemain, de ne pas savoir ce qui va se passer demain, et que les gens doivent être dehors pour se battre et qu'ils ne peuvent pas rester à la maison. Et que ça devient... cet état d'esprit devient même un autre virus qui n'est pas le coronavirus, qui est plutôt cette incertitude du lendemain.
Yes, so I asked Doreen how is it going. He says they have until now only one really recorded case that is positive tested for coronavirus. Really? Yes, only one, which is amazingly good, because I mean, we know what the dangers are. But he means that, of course, what much worse is that this insecurity, how the next day is going to happen, got, of course, even worse for people, because people are completely dependent on selling on the streets, on making work on the streets, on finding to eat on the streets, and they are not allowed to go on the streets. So it was very difficult for them to keep on their normal routines of just basically getting fed and getting some money in. So it means that this is another virus that they have to fight with, is this uncertainty that is there really every day. And I must say, it's true. I was there last year, and I thought, if I wasn't there with some people that I was working some frame, I would really, really, really be unable to survive. Meaning, really, I would have to adapt completely to new thing. And I'm just so extremely respectful. What does that mean, that you really wake up and you don't know if you sell the fish today or not? I mean, this is, for me, it's never been a case in my life. I never had such a situation. And I think that's there. And how still people are waking up with smile and there's so much good energy. I was so shocked how calm that the violence is so low, that in other places I was thinking violence would be so big if people are so oppressed, but here it's somehow people have been just so generous towards each other and nice. Oui, tu comprends, Dorine?
Ouais, j'ai compris. Yeah, I understood.
Ouais. So just my personal, very personal subjective remark on that.
I like this frame of that there is a virus. Maybe in some other places, you know, economic precarity, what will tomorrow bring? I think that some people have been trying to think about this almost as a neoliberal condition, right? Like that capitalism has been increasing its production of anxiety. The number of people who are freelancers who don't know if they will be gentrified out of their city. And that's true even in Berlin, which is like the biggest center of contemporary art, or as you say, there could be 10 improvised music concerts in a night. Like there's nowhere else in the world that that is true, nowhere in quite the same way. And even in Berlin, which one of the reasons that people are there is because it was a cheaper city. And that's going away. So I think that the virus revealing how capitalism has already been a certain kind of virus and a certain, and whether it's in the Congo, I mean, it's interesting. I also grew up in a mining town. So when we think about how like the politics of extraction and the politics of wealth inequity, and that brings us all the way to the politics of technology, there's a lot of links between these things, right? Like the mining in Congo is necessary for the computer technology that we're functioning in. So this idea that we're all in it together is of course not true, but at the same time, there are these unifying like the global capital project that shapes or produces these anxieties and precarities is everywhere.
Ouais,
or mutually dependent.
Definitely, yes. Dorine, tu as compris un peu que on a dit que bien sûr que cette mode de vie précaire avec
incertitude.
Oui.
J'ai dit que le capitalisme est un virus.
C'est ça, le capitalisme est un virus.
Et le capitalisme produit cette angoisse, on peut dire une angoisse ou une précarité néolibérale. Et si on parle d'une mine au Congo, et j'ai dit que moi aussi je viens d'une ville des mines au Canada, mais le capitalisme produit une précarité et une inégalité économique qui est c'est aussi une espèce de virus mondial ou global.
Oui, bien sûr, oui. Alors que oui, alors, yes, I can totally, definitely agree. I think that what happens basically at the moment is that this virus, unfortunately, again, gives power to the ones that had already a lot of power and takes even the smallest amount of power from people who were just about to maybe locally get something. Because again, what it does to us, we are maybe stuck in our houses, but people there cannot be stuck in our houses because they are not able then to survive. It was the same problem in India, where people just basically started to flee to the countryside because they knew if they are stuck in Delhi, they would just die of hunger. Yeah. And I think that I wouldn't even dare now to go into the whole history of Congo, which when you start to just understand, and of course we all know, but it's just such a complex topic that I never know where to start to even think about that. basically what I think is so fantastic is that when I listen to Doreen's video, the mechanisms that he was talking about are somehow somewhat similar to many that we know that can be applied in different contexts. And I think this is for me very beautiful to see that his way of seeing the world through improvisation is actually also a certain way of resisting, of reactivity, of reactivating, reinventing in a very specific context that we are not part of. Oui, je juste dis Doreen qu'on sait tout que capitalisme c'est un virus, bien sûr, mais je dis juste que que l'histoire, la situation des Congo par rapport au Congo, bien sûr, c'est assez complexe, tu dis? Oui, complexe. Que je ne veux pas maintenant juste ouvrir ce sujet, mais j'ai dit juste que j'étais très heureuse de voir ton vidéo parce qu'on peut voir que les mécanismes dans l'improvisation que tu vois et que tu utilises sont quelque part le même mécanisme qu'on a ici aussi dans les différents contextes. Et ça, c'est beau de voir que quelque chose nous vraiment peut connecter dans certaines manières. Oui, ça que je dis. Tu es là? Oh oh.
He's there and he's chatting. He's still there.
Doreen?
He just put something on chat.
Yeah, I know, but I don't hear him anymore.
No.
I know, but I think there's something going on with the connection.
Oh, he says he doesn't hear us. He says he doesn't hear us either.
It's also such a pity because from the YouTube stream we almost never saw the Doreen speaking. You know, they don't. So Zoom chooses only the faces of people talking.
Pity.
Pity. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
So he said he lost his connection.
Okay. Well, Doreen. Oh. Yes. I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I think improvisation could save us all. This is a hypothetical manière, but I think as far and as long as we practice as individually relating to all the living and non-living objects, something is being at change. And I think that's maybe where we can conclude to that. I'm very sorry that we lost Doreen. Doreen, it was amazing to hear you at least for 5 minutes. And to watch the video was very beautiful message. I was very touched because I haven't been there for a long year, and to see again the streets and that this country that you really simply have to sense through so many different senses. It's a city that just really attacks you from every aspect, and it's just so overwhelming, but it was an amazing place.
Are you seeing what his chat says?
Oh, this is another problem that we have to face here. Less of 10% of the population have access to internet, and a very bad and low one. Yes. You are absolutely right. Okay, guys, so we are going to probably end here with a bit of a sadness because of that technical shit, but
Glitches happen.
But this is exactly what happens, and I'm really sad, and I really well, that's it. I mean, I'm very sad that this happened at the moment, but we had at least a few minutes time, but we had at least a video, which was very good. So I'm very happy that we managed to do that. Okay, Simon, are you still there? Because you're so frozen that I don't even know. I think Simon is not there.
Let's see. Simon.
Simon is trying to.
Oh, Simon fell out again.
Says that he's there.
Oh I'm sorry, but it's so funny.
Well, you know, it's there. He's
Okay, I'm just Simon. I brought you back online because you were so frozen that we didn't know anymore if you were there or.
Yeah, I was here, but yeah, I just had to shut the computer.
Okay.
Okay.
So no, I admitted you now, and I just say let's just end here. It's already a very long time. And I wish you all the best. Please stay healthy. And if you feel like joining our other talks tomorrow, there is a talk at 11 European time about gathering and demonstrating and collective in the times of pandemics, and also how it could look like and what it is. And then at 3, you are still welcome if you want to register. There is a discussion where we can discuss together about the research through artistic practices and the social responsibility.
And if you want to see the conversation on the voice we had earlier today, we will upload it in the homepage and in our YouTube channel tomorrow.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Good,
I'll be uploading everything. I'm very, very, very grateful. We had this amazing talk for 2.5 hours.
The longest of all the talks.
It's improvisation. It's improvisation. We could go on like that for like next, I know. But this is, well, so Keith, have a good start in your day. We are going to sleep in a moment. No, we have still, at midnight, we have still a lecture.
Wow.
I'm very, very happy to have seen you and to talk to you. And I hope to see you live. And Keith, we're not going to see in Vienna this year, which is really, because I guess you would be coming for Impulse Dance, but it's not happening. I know. So, but let's hope we find our way soon, because it will probably, the body will want to find its way. So I really hope so.
Thank you so much for hosting this and bringing us together, even through the Zooming. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great to meet you all, and thanks, Veza and Magdalena. Thanks so much for organizing.
Yeah, I'm feeling like I would like to have a beer now with you, you know.
Yeah.
And much more questions, but maybe we leave it for another time.
Yes, but maybe guys, we can just once catch up or something, or I don't know. You now have like, we can connect in some certain ways. If
it would be great. I look forward to it. We'll do it without computer screens between us.
Yes, that would be lovely. That would be lovely if this happens soon. Stay healthy, guys.
All right.
Stay sane. Always anti-capitalist. Have a good day and a good night. Bye.
Good.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.